that aging itself is the biggest risk factor for every chronic disease and death, right? Whether we're talking about Alzheimer's, whether we're talking about cardiovascular disease, whether we're talking about diabetes, the biggest risk factor for all of those, even cancer, is your age, right? And so if we know that people age differently, we want a better way to measure it, right? Not just the number of times you've been around the sun. We want to measure it on a molecular level. And that's really what we've been able to do, is create a diagnostic that tells us essentially where you are in that progress from a biological basis, rather than just, how, the chronological age that you get on your birth certificate.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of The Report. Today, I got a special guest. I got someone who is the founder of True Diagnostics, helping people measure and improve their biological age using cutting-edge science. I got my man, Ryan Smith. Ryan, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Dude, appreciate you coming on, man. I'm so excited to dive into all this stuff, dude. I actually started a new season of no drinking yesterday, so today is day 2. I started doing this about 18 months ago, and for the first time in my life, where I started taking, extended periods of breaks of no drinking, where I, work on my fitness, I work on my business, I work on a lot of self-growth, I work on my mind, my body, and man, it is a cheat code. I started doing it early last year. I did 75 days, then I did 100 days. I've done multiple stints of 60 days, and up until about August 1 of this year, I had only drank a couple times all of this year, and August, I came back and enjoyed. I think it's important to, enjoy the fruits of your labor every now and then. It's important, especially as a busy entrepreneur, to kind of reset a little bit, right? And so I did that. But now I'm ready to dial it back in. But man, there's so many takeaways that I have after going through these seasons of not drinking, and then I come back for a little bit. But number one is just how my body feels and my energy levels. My energy levels, when I am drinking, just completely plummet. And my output, my effectiveness as an entrepreneur, everything slowly dies when I'm drinking. Spit some game to me, man. What were you telling me before? You said there was a stat.
Yeah, no, I mean, we with alcohol in particular, I think, things have changed in how people look at it. I think recently, especially with a lot of the biological aging data that we're generating, we certainly see its negative impacts. Even outside of things like how you feel or the energy that you have, we know that it affects the aging process directly. And so people who drink, on average, 5 drinks or more a week are 4.4 years older biologically than people who don't. So we know that it absolutely plays an impact on a lot of things that we talk about, but especially the aging process.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's everything from fitness. I mean, your body just snatches up the inflammation in your face. I notice it in my face. The energy levels, productivity, just everything is a lot more dialed when you're not drinking. And so for me, I feel like it is the ultimate cheat code, and I feel like it's easy for a lot of folks to look for other solutions when sometimes the solution is simply just cut out the alcohol.
Yeah, definitely.
You sleep better too.
Yeah. We, it's cool because our testing obviously quantifies aging, but we also quantify the amount you're drinking. So it keeps you honest a little bit because you can see the molecular signatures, right?
What does that mean?
So we measure epigenetics, which is basically gene expression, and we learn how to read those patterns. And so whenever you drink, you're inducing a specific gene pattern, essentially, that we can look at and see. We can tell you how much you're drinking, and we can relate that drinking signal to a lot of different outcomes. And so the good news is that you don't, even though obviously all that anecdotal things about how you feel, the energy levels, they're all important, but we also want to tie it to the outcome data, right? Like what is drinking actually put you at risk for? Because at the end of the day, we want to know, is it a good or bad thing, and what does it affect? And what we see is just generally across the board, your negative outcomes increase exponentially on alcohol use.
I just turned 40. And so, at this stage of my life now, for the first time, I'm really starting to think about my longevity. You guys have a biological aging test. Break down what's included in this test. What does this test tell you?
Yeah, so ultimately what we do is we give you an age for your body, right? That is the main thing. We also can give you the age for different organ systems. So we can tell you how your brain is aging versus your lungs versus your kidneys. And we also tell you how fast you're aging right now. So on almost like a speedometer of aging. And so all of these things give us essentially the way to predict how you're going to be aging and how long your life is. One of our best algorithms that we created with Harvard is can predict your date of death within 3 years at a 92% accuracy. And so, yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's, a lot of people immediately go to, hey, do I want to know this information? But the good news is it's also changeable, and it really empowers you to make the necessary lifestyle changes, whether it's, drugs and medication, social experiences, or, supplements, diet, nutrition, all of these things impact this overall aging. And we're really, now that we have an objective way to measure it, trying to figure out what is the biggest mover.
Mm. And so break that down. So the first number you're going to get is physically how you're aging.
Correct. Yeah.
And what does that mean exactly?
So it tells you how old your body is, right? And I think everyone probably has a concept of this, right? Some people might know people in their 70s who look 50, and vice versa, people in their 50s who look 70.
And I noticed that, like, as I get into, my late 30s, you get into your early 40s, you really start to notice the difference of how well people take or don't take care of their bodies. Whereas, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, everyone really looks the same, generally speaking. But at my age now, I see people my age and I'm like, some of them look like they're 55 and some of them look like they're 30.
Yeah, it starts to catch up to you, right? All those lifestyle things start to exacerbate as the time gets longer. So the biggest thing though is that aging itself is the biggest risk factor for every chronic disease and death, right? Whether we're talking about Alzheimer's, whether we're talking about cardiovascular disease, whether we're talking about diabetes, the biggest risk factor for all of those, even cancer, is your age, right? And so if we know that people age differently, we want a better way to measure it, right? Not just the number of times you've been around the sun, we want to measure it on a molecular level. And that's really what we've been able to do, is create a diagnostic that tells us essentially where you are in that progress from a biological basis, rather than just, how, the chronological age that you get on your birth certificate.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second number you get, you said, measures the age of your organs.
Yeah. So we can so knowing your aging is great, right? It's a first start, but people age differently. Like a smoker is going to have much, much higher lung age, right? Than someone who's maybe overweight has much higher metabolic age. Someone who is, doesn't work out and has, weak muscle mass might have a low muscle age or high muscle age. And so knowing your aging is great, but if you really want to improve it, it's good to have resolution so you can take individualized steps, right? Because if you can't change it, what's the point of measuring? And that's really the benefit of what we're doing now, is that we can get more specific on what's exactly driving that process for you, so you can really focus on how to change that one thing directly.
So let me ask you a question. So me coming off of 5 weeks of, drinking socially, and then now me starting a new season of not drinking, will my numbers, if I take this test, be drastically different if I take them today versus 60 days of being sober and really working on myself and my health?
Yeah, absolutely. There are some things that change really rapidly in our testing. Biological age is one of those things that might take a little bit longer to change, but your drinking score, for instance, we could tell if we took a test, you drank that night, took a test the next day, it would dramatically change really, really quickly. And so, yes, even
because your organs rebuild themselves.
Exactly. And like your liver, for instance, we absolutely could tell, your liver age will go up if you drink more often. And so we can absolutely see that signal change in just a few weeks for you if you were to do that test. And for what it's worth, if you ever want one and to go through the experience, test before and after, happy to send you a couple to go through that process.
I might never drink again.
Exactly. Once you see the signal, right, it can be another thing to motivate you to be compliant with what you know is the better lifestyle choice. So yeah, absolutely, all of those things change. And that's really the benefit of all of this, is that you can quantify all of these things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Even things like the amount of social interaction experiences you have, or how tight your relationships are, those play a difference in aging too. And so we can start to quantify all of the different things we do from a diet, health, and nutrition perspective.
I'm curious, what's the biggest discrepancy in someone's test that you've seen, them taking one and then working on the things that you tell them to go work on, and then what do they test afterwards?
Oh, we've seen 30-year age differences.
Really?
Yeah. But those people generally start very, very unhealthy, right? It's easier to reverse that process if you're already in a relatively bad spot. For people who are relatively optimized, it can be sometimes difficult to see anti-aging reversals. We also have this competitive leaderboard we call the Rejuvenation Olympics. Right now, Brian Johnson, who most people know in this aging space as one of the biggest key opinion leaders, he's on the leaderboard for the best reversal, but also the best overall aging metric.
What's his metric read?
Yeah, so right now, his average rate of aging is 0.51, which means for every 1 year of aging, he's only biologically aging a half of a year, which is pretty incredible. Whenever he first started his first test, I think, on the Rejuvenation Leaderboard was 1.01. So he was aging faster than a chronological year, but now he's cut it essentially in half, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and so you said that this test will tell you within 3 years of when you die.
Yeah, well, I should say we can do that, but we actually don't report it.
You don't report it?
Yeah, some of the ethical implications of that are, a little bit fuzzy, and And so we, instead of reporting when you're going to die, we give it to you as a biological age. So we tell you again. So most of the people would, would be dying early would have an advanced age, meaning that they're going to be older biologically than their chronological age.
Yeah. But like, let's just say I wanted to know that age. Could you guys tell me?
We could,
Because I heard
yeah,
Dana White talk about,
yeah,
he started working with Gary Brecka, and he did some genetic testing with Gary Brecka, and he said Gary was able to tell him exactly, I think he said he had like 15 years left based on his current health conditions. And that was what gave him the wake up call to go get in shape, start eating better, and start taking care of his body better. And he was able to prolong that. But for me, if I took the test, I would want to know. I would want to know.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, there are a lot of claims out there about being able to predict death, and unfortunately, most of them are just not true. In the case of even the Gary Brecka or Dana White claim, they claim that they could get an accuracy of a week, which is just absolutely not true. The best thing that's been published in the scientific literature to date is the algorithm we've created, which is still a 3-year span, right? So, but that's pretty still accurate, relatively in terms of outcomes. But the answer is that unfortunately we still can't do it, mainly because, and oftentimes we don't want to do it either because, even right now, insurance companies are already looking at this as a metric. They're going to say, can I set your premium based on, these different markers, which are the most predictive of these outcomes? And so we have to tread a little bit carefully because with genomics, there's plenty of protection. But unfortunately, with epigenetics right now, there's not the same protection legally that you would have about, these metrics and who gets access to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've seen the Brian Johnson documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
That's an interesting dude right there.
Yeah.
So if someone takes this test, you mentioned there's ways to prolong your longevity. I know Brian Johnson takes, at least in the documentary, he's taken hundreds of pills every single day. But I imagine for most of your clients, they don't have to take hundreds of pills to work on the certain items they need to in order to improve their biological aging. What are like the top 2 or 3 things that one can do to improve their longevity?
Yeah, the tried and true methods are I hate to say it, the things you already know, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Exercise being by far the biggest mover. Staying active is by far the best thing to do.
And break that down. Is that a combination of lifting weights? Is that cardio? What is it?
So generally both. You want a good mixture, right? As we get older, we tend to lose muscle mass. It's one of the first things that happens. So muscular strength is great, and even the muscle to brain axis keeps getting more and more data to show that it's better. You're taking care of your brain if you're taking care of your muscles. So definitely strength training, but also cardiovascular training, right? Anything like high intensity interval training, anything to get your heart rate up is amazing. And you don't need to, be running, 10 miles a day. As long as you're doing some things to get your heart rate up and in training, it can be relatively easy.
What are your thoughts on walking or hiking?
Yeah, also great. The newest data, it used to be, hey, you should do 10,000 steps a day. The newest data shows that even 4,500 steps a day have sort of the same protective benefits for longevity as 10,000. So as long as you're active, people say, just sitting is now like one of the worst things you can do. So as long as you're sort of staying active, getting up and moving around the day, it tends to be protective. But again, these are the things that I think that most people already know. It's pretty intuitive for them. But it's still the biggest movers in these aging signals.
Okay. So exercise, and then what are a couple other big levers? Is it diet?
Yeah, diet's huge. Diet's a massive, we've done now over 120 different interventional trials looking at what reverses biological age. We've done over 15 that looked at diet. We had one study that was on Netflix on vegans versus omnivores, where we took identical twins and one twin went on a vegan diet, the other one went on a standard omnivore diet. That was just over the course of 4 weeks, but we saw, big anti-aging effects in the vegan group where we didn't see it on the sort of standard omnivore diet. So plant-based diets always seem to perform well. The probably across all of our data sets, the one that looks the best are just green Mediterranean diets. People who are eating more plants, it doesn't mean you have to cut out meat at all, but definitely a plant, center diet, along with all the polyphenols and things that are included in those, look to be really, really effective.
Is there anything to say about like metabolisms and eating white meat versus red meat if you are going to eat meat?
I'm sure that
or is
there
everyone
is,
different?
but we haven't particularly analyzed that. And so, in quantifying metabolism tends to be pretty hard anyway. But unfortunately, no data there.
Because how much of it is like how you feel after you eat certain types of food? Because I'm sure everyone's a little bit different. But for me, for example, I feel better, higher energy levels. My brain feels more clear, and I'm just a better version of myself when I eat white meat, like fish, let's say, versus eating a lot of heavy red meat.
Yeah, one of the cool things that we're sort of working on now is we can actually tell the metabolites of the food that you're eating. So we can actually give you a signal now to say, hey, this is how much processed food you're eating versus red meat versus papaya versus rice versus coffee. So we can actually now, which is the same data set we're using to quantify your biological age, also tell you what you're eating. But the cool news now is that we can also then tell you where you might be deficient in certain different things, or we could even tell you to what are the best food behaviors to reverse your risk of Alzheimer's. So the amount of like food and nutrition things that are coming out now from a science perspective are amazing. Where eventually we'll be able to recommend diets specific to you, right? So we can sort of say, hey, we can take in that anecdotal information, but we can also do it based on all of your different risk proximities, and then make recommendations on that. But yeah, I think that everyone is different, right? The ability to process lactose, or the ability to process different red meat behaviors, or the ability, some people might need red meat for the iron that it has. Even nutrition is all personalized and should be personalized.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the genetic test before we started recording. I personally took the 10x Health genetic test that Grant Cardone and Gary Brecker are part of. That was it was a relatively smaller panel. I think it was only like 6 or 7 genes that it broke down, and it just tells you like red, yellow, or green. And if you're green, you're good. If you're yellow, it could use some improving. And then if it was in the red, it was definitely something that you needed to take a look at. And it would tell you like if you got it from both parents or just one parent.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was pretty good in, I think out of the 7, I was good in 5 of them. And I had a couple that were yellow. And I didn't read too much about what it was exactly, but it said take these nutrients and these vitamins. And so I ordered the vitamins. One of them was Optimize.
Yeah.
And so I've been taking a couple of those every day. To be honest with you, I don't even know what's in them, but
Yeah.
I have been taking them. And I do feel a little bit better for sure. I do feel more energy since I started taking them. I take another one from 10X Health that's a testosterone boost. But you mentioned you guys have a gene test as well. Is that right?
Well, we do genomic testing for a lot of other companies. So we actually don't offer the test ourselves, but do the lab processing to be able to do all that. So yeah, definitely, I would say an expertise in genomics in addition to the epigenetics that we do as well.
And what exactly is broken down in a genetic test?
Yeah, so with genomics, you have hundreds or millions of genes, right? I mean, there's a lot of things to look at. And so whenever I tell people, if you're trying to see how good a test is that is commercially available with genomics, genomics used to be expensive, right? Now it's not. It's dropped. The price to get a whole genome is even in some cases under $200 now. And so I always say look for the bang for your buck, right? Like now even you can get under $100 a test that looks at over 700,000 genes, right? And so that might be like information overload, but at the same time, all those things that you measured, you can get probably at a fraction of the cost and get way more information as well. The great thing about the 10x genomics test is it is actionable, right? It's paired to actual things, and particularly they're looking at your ability to methylate, which can be easily fixed with certain types of supplements like 5-methylfolate or trimethylglycine, which are probably in those supplements you mentioned. So it's really actionable, but there's a lot of other genomic tests out there that probably give you way more information for less dollars.
Yeah. And what are the main things that you want to look at when you take those tests?
Oh, well, it really depends. There's so much to look at there, right? I mean, for me, I have an ApoE4 variant, which predisposes me to Alzheimer's. So that's something I really want to know, right? But for me, I don't have any DNA methylation thing, so I don't have to take 5-methylfolate. But there's so many things you can look at. You can look at your response to different diet types, right? That's even within your genomics. That might be one of the reasons why you have a better response to white meat, for instance. So the best thing to do, I think, is just to get the data, right? And get as much data as possible, because your genomics isn't going to change, right? It's going to stay one test throughout a lifetime is all you need to get all of that information. And then how you interpret it could change, right? It could be right now you might be really focused on, sort of your effects to alcohol, and you could sort of, say, hey, I want to look at the genomics in that regard. Or you can say, hey, I want to pick the best diet type for me. So it really just depends on your level of interest, but there's so much information in the genome. I always just say, go get the most data possible. And then how you interpret that could always, change.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned there's a couple avenues that you guys are testing that can prolong your aging.
Yeah.
A couple of them I found unique. You mentioned ketamine and MDMA.
Yeah.
Break that down.
Yeah, definitely. So, one of the things about biological aging is everything affects it, right? We've sort of already talked about, even if we even know that if you work over 40 hours a week, you're on average 1.2 years older. So everything affects it. But one of the things that has been really interesting is this advent of these sort of what used to be recreational drugs now coming into clinical medicine. So For instance, ketamine, we did a trial on treatment-resistant depression. So for people who, have failed a lot of other depression-related things, treatments, we tried ketamine. And strangely enough, one of the things we found is that not only did they all respond in terms of their depression symptoms, but they also had over a year and a half of age reduction in biological age as well. So that was a really unique finding.
And when you say ketamine can have those positive effects,
Yeah.
At what kind of dosages are we talking?
Yeah, so these are IV doses. These are generally IV doses that are accompanied with therapy in office. So we're talking, relatively large doses. We're not talking about like a 100 milligram troche, which is often, something that is really popular now in terms of ketamine clinics. These are pretty big infusions where you're pairing them with cognitive behavioral
And this is a daily dosage of ketamine.
So this was actually 3 days a week for 2 weeks. So a total of 6 therapies over the course of 2 weeks, which
and 2 weeks and done.
Yeah, 2 weeks and done.
To continue.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely. And again, more studies will probably be done on that.
Is this enough of a dosage to feel a head change?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that dissociative experience you get with ketamine is the reason why it's so effective in therapy. You can be a little bit better at breaking down some of your previous misconceptions, get out of your headspace that might be detrimental. And so that's the idea of pairing it with behavioral cognitive therapy is really the therapy and process. In the case of MDMA, it's a little bit different as well. People even do MDMA guided assistant therapies. But in this case, we were just using this idea of recreational MDMA use and seeing how it affected biological age. For MDMA, we did not see a huge biological age change. But for ketamine, we certainly did.
Interesting. What is the history of ketamine? Isn't it like a tranquilizer for animals?
Yeah, well, it's been used traditionally as like even a sedative within things like surgery and other things. But the psychological experience of that dissociative experience is really the way that people are using it now to tackle like trauma and neurological things like PTSD or depression.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on ayahuasca?
Yeah. So we're doing a study on ayahuasca right now. Ayahuasca, along with even like psilocybin from mushrooms, these plant-based medicine experiences are also super important. I mean, we see that almost every neurological condition, PTSD, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of these result in advanced biological aging, which is super unique. But the idea is that if you can hopefully fix a lot of those neurological consequences, you can also fix the aging process itself. And they tend to be intimately related. The reason why we're so excited about aging is it's the biggest risk factor for every disease. But sometimes the disease will also increase risk of aging. And so it seems to be, chicken or the egg type of situation here. But in the case of ayahuasca, a lot of people also have these moving experiences which change them psychologically. And looking at how the psychological experience relates to the aging experience is really what we're looking at now. And so currently, in addition to what we've done with MDMA and ketamine, we're also doing studies in ayahuasca and in psilocybin. And so, ayahuasca, it's probably too early to say, but on even the psilocybin and sort of the mushroom related experiences, those look really good for aging, even beyond our testing. Even now, we know that, for instance, mice or even cells that have been exposed to psilocybin tend to have longer lifespans.
So for the folks that are not familiar with ayahuasca, I'm personally not familiar with it. I've heard of many folks going down to Brazil. I think they go for like 5, 6, 7 days. What exactly is ayahuasca?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'm not a huge expert in ayahuasca either. All that I know is from these clinical trials that we're doing. And so, traditionally, I think that experience you're mentioning is the way that it's been typically performed. These in indigenous communities have used plant-based medicine in their cultures for a long time. So particularly, people will talk about shaman experiences where they'll have a sort of a guide that will, in these altered psychological states, help them through. It's not too differential from cognitive behavioral therapy, right? That's happening with ketamine. Sort of these guides to help them through these experiences where their mental state is altered. And so it's traditionally in these indigenous communities who have a lot of experience with it. But now it's certainly morphing away from these shaman experiences into traditional clinical medicine.
Yeah, interesting, man. Hey guys, if you're looking to get into real estate investing, but you're like, hey, I don't have the time, but you want to participate in the passive income, the tax benefits, and the wealth building, my company, Summers Capital, partners with limited partners, people like yourself, and we go out and buy boutique hotels. We have a fund where we currently own 5 hotels, and we currently have a wait list for investors to participate with us. If you want to learn more to see if this is a fit for you, you can go to summerscapital.com/invest to inquire and get on our wait list and be notified next time we have an opportunity. Again, summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show. You mentioned that you're into the peptide game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think with men, especially in their late 30s, 40s,
Yeah.
getting in the 50s, low testosterone is something that is an effect, right? I recently got tested for the first time, actually it was last year, and I tested relatively high naturally. It was like almost a 700. So I decided not to go on it. However, on the flip side, had I tested a little bit low, 300, 400, I would have definitely elected to go on it. Now, break down what exactly peptides is, because I think the popular one that I hear about a lot is TRT.
Yeah.
What exactly is peptides?
Well, so peptides are often grouped with TRT, but slightly different. These hormone replacement therapies are also an aging treatment, right? The idea is that as we get older, our testosterone levels drop, and it's the same with women where their sex hormones like estrogen also change, right? And so the idea is that with testosterone replacement therapy, how do we get ourselves back to the levels we had when we were younger? And matching those levels causes a massive difference across the board in how we feel, our body composition. Testosterone and any hormone by nature is acting all over the body. And so it's super powerful for its different effects. In the case of the peptides are just small amino acid changes or amino acid change that function like drugs. But the idea is that by using these amino acid changes, you're mimicking the body's natural production. So it's very similar to this idea of hormone replacement therapy in that you're mimicking natural processes within the body. But peptides can cover every area of health, whether it's improving hormone levels like your growth hormone, or helping with regeneration, or helping with really even sexual function. These things, there's a peptide that really can mimic the natural process in just about everything. And so because of the replacement narrative with hormones as well as peptides, they're often grouped together, but slightly different. One's a hormone, the other one is sort of a small peptide or protein.
Yeah. Who do you think is a good candidate? Like if a guy is listening to this show right now, who is a good candidate to take peptides?
Literally everyone. The thing with peptides is that, or the peptide culture that's sort of been created, is that they're sort of outside of a traditional medical experience. Most of your physicians are not going to know about them. So I always suggest to do your own research, but there really is a peptide for everything. I mean, let's talk about testosterone. There's 2 amazing peptides which can increase your endogenous expression of testosterone, some up to 40%. And so if
when you said endogenous expression of testosterone, what does that mean?
So generally with our bodies will stop producing testosterone as we get older. So the idea is that our pituitary gland produces hormones which like luteinizing hormone or follicular stimulating hormone, which then produce the hormones from our testicles, right? And so as we get older, they just stop producing that signal. And so as that signal diminishes, so do our levels of testosterone. But the pituitary controls a lot of other processes too, like growth hormone production, even our thyroid stimulating hormone for thyroid. And so as we get older, these things diminish. And we want to, there's ways though to tell our body to start increasing those again. So rather than just replacing them, like giving testosterone to someone, we can then encourage our pituitary to give the signals to produce testosterone.
And this is through the peptides.
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
And
Interesting.
So it's sort of a mixture. If you're not ready for hormone replacement therapy, there are ways to still increase those levels by telling your body to produce more.
Yeah, because that's one of the reasons I've been kind of hesitant, is because I know that once you go through the replacement therapy, your body's going to stop producing natural testosterone.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you're saying with this peptide, it will actually trigger your body to produce more testosterone naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of the idea with peptides, is rather than just taking a hammer and giving the product naturally, you increase your body's production of these things. So it feels a little bit more natural to the typical processes your body would go through.
And is that still through via an injection?
Yeah, but that's really the big problem with a lot of these peptides, is that they're not orally bioavailable. So you can't take a pill. And so most of them are done through subcutaneous injections, just really small needles into any fatty tissue in your body. Completely painless, but a little bit more tedious if you're not used to that process.
Yeah. If you didn't want to put a needle in you and you just want to take something orally, is there any dietary supplements out there orally that you can take to improve your natural testosterone levels?
Well, so, I think that most of the dietary supplements on the market have, I would say, efficacy, which people might not immediately feel. And so, but there are absolutely products you can take orally to increase testosterone levels. My favorite is a prescription drug called enclomiphene. What it does is it blocks sort of certain estrogen receptors, which gives your body a signal to produce more testosterone.
Mm,
And those can cause even 30-40% increases in testosterone
really?
levels. Yeah, even with just a simple pill once a day.
What's the name of that one?
So it's called enclomiphene. The more traditional name is called Clomid, Clomid. But yeah, super effective. You can get it as a prescription. And it's sort of an intermediate before you would actually start hormone replacement.
Interesting. And you're also on Ozempic.
Yeah,
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 Ozempic is obviously very trendy right now,
yeah,
especially up in Hollywood and LA. I mean, I even know a lot of my friends, their parents are on
yeah,
Ozempic.
absolutely.
Is a weight loss supplement. Break down Ozempic.
Yeah, well, so I'm always surprised to hear people like say I'm not on Ozempic. It seems like this like dirty word that people are associated with. I don't have that same feel. I myself try a lot of different things. I would consider myself, pretty avant-garde on trying a lot of new health related things. And so for me, Ozempic was not something I wanted to do to lose weight. There's a lot of other benefits of these class of what we call these GLP-1s, so these glucagon-like peptides. So this is a peptide too, right? All the GLP-1s are also in that peptide category. Again, mimicking a body's natural process to then make us feel more full, to consume less food, and to make our insulin more sensitive, so that whenever we actually do have food, we're driving into the muscle instead of just staying around all that blood sugar is staying in the blood. So there are many different benefits of the GLP-1s. Everyone knows it though for weight loss, right? Everyone loses a lot of weight. That's not why I take it. I take it for a lot of the other benefits. One of the things it does is it reduces inflammation significantly. We see reductions in C-reactive protein, which is one of these massive inflammatory regulators. We see also it changed the way that our brain reward system works. So one of my favorite things about Ozempic is it really it helps people stop drinking. This
Really?
is Oh, absolutely.
Why is that?
Because once you have a drink, you feel so full that you can't drink anymore. This is actually, it's played a difference even in the stock market prices of alcohol companies. Because now that everyone's on Ozempic, they're just drinking less. And it's not just drinking; it's any sort of this dopamine reward behavior, right? So some people might binge eat because they get dopamine spikes, right? They have all these foods in maybe a week time, maybe late at night. I know I'm one of those. And so Ozempic helps me curb those cravings. I don't get that same dopaminergic reward. And so I'm allowed to do the things I know I should do, right? Not drink, be really good on my diet, and also reduce inflammation.
Does it affect your ability to consume protein? Because some of the folks
Yeah.
I know that are on Ozempic, they're not eating enough protein, and so their bodies have become very frail and not a lot of muscle.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest fears. I try and do 2 grams of protein for every bit of body weight that I have, and that's a lot of protein every single day. And so Ozempic certainly curbs that desire to eat. And so sometimes it feels like work.
Yeah.
But
Does it
yeah.
make food not taste good? Because
Food,
I love a good In-N-Out burger every now and then.
yeah.
Does that all of a sudden become not good?
it tastes fine, but you just don't want to consume the whole thing. So it limits that. It just provides you moderation. And so I still enjoy all the foods, but just have less of them generally. And still, it allows me to choose what I actually want to consume, right? So if I am focused on protein, I'll make sure that I'm eating, things with high protein that are better for me. And so, we actually just recently did a study on the GLP-1. So we did it in an HIV population, but we saw that Ozempic in particular, the semaglutide, showed massive anti-aging reductions in almost every clock we measured. In the case of the systems clock, it reduced almost every organ system age by over 4 years.
Really?
It was a pretty massive effect. Again, this was an HIV population, but it just goes to show you that, again, improving metabolic health and improving insulin sensitivity has a massive impact even on aging.
Is it more so what's in the Ozempic that's creating that, or is it more so the effects of actually just eating smaller portion sizes?
Yeah, almost certainly just eating less and becoming more metabolically healthy. The Ozempic is just a tool to help do that.
I didn't really think about that. So like you're saying, just generally speaking, apples to apples, if you take 2 people and one person eats large portion sizes, another person eats small portion sizes for the course of a year, same foods, apples to apples, the person that eats smaller sample sizes, portion sizes, is going to age way better?
Yeah, absolutely. In the aging industry, there's really historically only one intervention that everyone believes in. And that's caloric restriction, just eating less calories than you're outputting every single day.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it prolonged your life.
Oh, absolutely. It's the one thing across every animal species, including humans, which has documented longevity effects. And so it's the one thing that everyone in the scientific community considers mainly to be the gold standard. Just eating less, and
No one talks about
yeah,
this.
and not only that, it's not just free; it's probably even cheaper, right? Because you're spending less money on food. But yeah, fasting, and particularly caloric deficit, is probably the number one thing we'd recommend for aging.
That's interesting stuff, dude. I'll have to check it out. Break down the effects of creatine, because I have been on and off the creatine. I haven't been on it for about 2 months, but I'm going to get back on it starting tomorrow. This morning I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm starting a new season of being sober. I'm going to, lift probably 6-7 days a week. I'm going to walk 4 or 5 miles a day during this entire season. And so I thought, why not get back on the creatine? But break that down.
Yeah, creatine has been previously thought about just for bodybuilding, right? But I've had my parents on it for the last 7 years. Creatine has so many good benefits. It increases energy production, right? This ATP production. But more recently, in addition to the benefits of strength and muscle mass, we've seen it helps significantly in the brain, even at higher doses. So one of the newest trends you've seen with creatine is not to take it at most people recommend 2.5 grams a day for muscle mass. Now even up to 10 grams per day has been shown to reduce cognitive aging, so reduce dementia, reduce Alzheimer's symptoms, and just improve cognitive function even in healthy individuals. So now it's just as much a nootropic to help with brain function as it is to help with muscle mass. Generally in the studies that we've done on creatine, which have been very small and very few, we generally see it has a small effect on aging, but some of the other benefits we see with the brain and with muscle mass with age, like we talk about frailty is one of those outcomes of age. Creatine's great there too. It's one of those things I think everyone should be on.
Now, what are the effects if you are lifting weights and you want to put on some muscle? What are the effects there with creatine?
Yeah, so generally, I think most of the studies haven't shown too much increase in muscle mass, but in muscle function, right? The strength that you get, you tend to hold a little bit more water. So sometimes you'll pick up a little bit weight on the scale, but if you look at the actual muscle mass through more, I would say, advanced imaging techniques, it doesn't seem to add that much muscle mass, but it does add a significant amount in strength.
And it shortens your recovery time too, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Muscle soreness and all that.
It's one of the, again, everyone should be taking it. I think I want to draw anyone who's thinking about taking creatine, whether or not you're a bodybuilder or not, it's a great thing to take.
Yeah. So I'm going to start tomorrow. Is it important to front load it, or it doesn't matter?
Yeah, not anymore. So it used to be, everyone used to say, especially with creatine monohydrate, which is, the main mechanism, people used to say you should front load it, do a high level dose. I think now just a consistent level dose, usually in 5 to 10 grams is the better way to go.
Okay, so minimum 5.
Yeah, I think so. Again, if you want the brain benefits, higher is better.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Any other nutrition or supplements that you would add here for someone, let's just say, someone that's in their late 30s, early 40s that just wants to optimize their health, get in shape, maybe listen to this podcast right now. They're like, hey, give me a couple quick tips, action steps they can take with them today to prolong their health.
Yeah, I think there's a few that everyone should be on, right? The data just looks overwhelmingly convincing for any single person, whether you're old, young, healthy, not healthy. So the ones are going to be pretty intuitive. Omega-3s, right? The fish oils across the board look to be good. Vitamin D is another one. Across the board, everything looks really good. There are two more unique ones that I always like to talk about too. One is one called alpha ketoglutarate, or AKG. This is one that also helps increase muscle mass, especially as we get older, but also helps with energy production across the board. It just really helps just about everyone with little to no side effects. The last one's the most interesting one that I've started to recommend for a while now, which is lithium supplementation. Most people know about lithium for bipolar patients. But we were looking in a cohort of bipolar patients, and those people who were taking lithium had significantly better aging. And so when we looked at our healthy patients, saw the same thing: lower biological ages in people who take lithium. And then just over the past few weeks, they've identified lithium as a mechanism to actually treat Alzheimer's as well, which is, just over the last 3 weeks, a huge breakthrough.
I've heard of lithium batteries. But I've never heard of this. This is a different lithium, right?
Same lithium. Same.
Really?
Same. It's on the periodic table. This sort of element. But yeah, lithium is found in our diets. It's and taking it for a supplement, lithium orotate, just 1 milligram dose is generally what I recommend.
What is it like hanging out with Brian Johnson? That's an interesting dude right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, Brian has done so much to elevate this idea of longevity, right? His Don't Die movement, is really cool, I think I tend to be like Brian in that I measure myself religiously. I test my blood every week, and then always try new things, right? I think that we sort of treat aging like a science, so I really respect a lot of what he's doing. He definitely takes a unique approach to it, but he's also been probably the best figure to draw attention to this movement and why we think it's so important.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about him until I watched his Netflix documentary. And if you're listening to this podcast right now, I definitely suggest you go check it out if you're into the anti-aging stuff. But to see his morning and afternoon routine of like all the supplements he takes, all the things that he does just to get ready for the day is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's hard to even pick one thing which is the most outrageous, right? That he does. Right now he's doing sauna and doing all his fertility markers and icing his testicles to see how the sauna affects it in a positive or negative way. The amount of detail that he has in his biomarkers is pretty incredible. But also, he eats like 1,300 calories a day, right? He's doing that caloric restriction.
Wow, 1,300.
Yeah, 40% of his caloric intake is from olive oil. His commitment is what I think is most impressive, because for anyone else to do that, it takes a lot of willpower and a really good mindset. And I think that that's certainly to be applauded.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I watched the documentary and I was thinking, man, like I could never do all the stuff that he does, but that's pretty cool that he does all that. How old is Brian?
I don't know chronologically how old he is, actually. I know that, again, his rate of aging is still that 0.51, which is the best on record for us. But again, he didn't start there. And I think that's the important part too, is that even someone like Brian, who, is treating this as an actual science with all of the effort and time he can, he started with a biological age that wasn't great and then reversed it almost by half. And so I think that for anyone else who wants to say, hey, I'm not in the right spot, or like I'm not healthy enough to think about aging, I need to think about all these other things, I would encourage them just to start, because you can have massive level differences even just by starting and paying attention to it.
I'm curious for you what your thoughts are on this. I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm trying to recall, but you'll know what it is. So you can go to these like labs, and they typically, like even some gyms, nicer gyms will have them, where they'll measure your body fat and your muscle mass and all that. What's the name of those tests?
So they're using bioelectrical impedance is the, but there are a lot of different brand names. There's InBody, Sika, there's
the InBody scans.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can even have them now at home that do bioelectrical impedance.
Yeah. And so I want to start taking those. How often would you recommend tracking if you were to really get dialed in?
Well, it's a good question.
Weekly or bi-weekly?
They're with the scales that are even at home now, they're relatively accurate. And so for me, I'll do an InBody probably every quarter is what I would do. But if you're doing the scales at home, they might not be as accurate to the actual level, but they're good relatively, right? So if you want to see which direction you're going, you can even do it daily at home as you're taking your weight. But that's obviously the better measure. If BMI is typically what's used in the medical system, right? And by I've got a less than a 10% body fat, but my BMI says I'm obese, technically, just because of my height to weight ratio. So BMI is outdated. These are by far the better way to look at how healthy you are metabolically.
Yeah, I love it. Ryan, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, man, dropping so much game, so much value. Where can the folks get in touch with you? And more importantly, where can they get in touch with you if they want to learn more about True Diagnostic Official?
Yeah, TrueDiagnostic.com is the best place to find information on our testing and all the different research we're doing. Again, outside of the things we talked about today, we've probably got 20 other interventional trials that are ongoing right now. So if you're interested in any particular area of research, we've got a lot of data.
I want to take the test.
Yeah.
The anti-aging or the test that tells you the age. Where can I do that at?
Yeah, you can do it on our website directly at True Diagnostic. I'm obviously gonna, I think, send a couple here for you to try out, and we can go over it. But
I want to take one now, coming off of like 5 weeks of drinking.
Yeah,
and then I want to take one in 60 days and see what the difference is.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll give you a before and after, and we can review some of that data.
I love it.
Yeah,
Ryan, I appreciate you so much. He's Ryan Smith. I'm Rich Summers. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Peace.